Thank you for logging on. Today is the Wednesday Windup. My name is Brian. This is Tim.
Howdy.
And thank you guys for logging on today. We have an awesome show. Lots of fun stuff to go over. But I'm going to let Tim take it from here just to start us off.
Yeah, before I launch into my tit-for-tat back and forth and this and that, let's talk about two things. First, I've got my Watch You Want Watch Reviews channel where you can see my old style quick hits. You want my old on-the-wrist reviews of watches with circumference of wrist and all, that's where you find it, Watch You Want Watch Reviews. The best way to see Watch You Want Watch Reviews is to get them sent directly to you with our Govberg Watchbox app. Now you can get it on our website, header bar app, govbergwatches.com. News, views, reviews, and information you can use, my videos, your favorite blogs and news sites, a curated selection of news, videos, but also a system for tracking the value of your collection, either a single watch, the entire collection, or even following watches you're thinking about buying. We use our pricing AI that pulls from all corners of the internet, plus our proprietary decades-long Watch You Want Govberg database to give you the real-time pricing. That's the Govberg Watchbox app, available on our website, govbergwatches.com, for iOS and Android.
And just to reiterate what Tim has already said, we really appreciate you guys using the app and sending in your feedback. I know that we're constantly updating the app. I think we might have even recently launched another update.
Yes.
And that's thanks to you guys and for sending in your critiques and things like that to really help us out. But starting right off the bat, we've got our this or that. So again, always trying to stump Tim, but we'll see how that goes. So today's this or that is the Vogard Business Officer Time Zoner, which should be presented there on the screen for you to see, versus the IWC Pilot's Time Zoner Chronograph. So I'll let Tim start this one off.
Well, okay, here's the thing. Two versions of the same system. All credit to Mike Vogt. He created the bezel adjustment time zone variance complication. In 2014, he launched it in his Business Officer Time Zoner. IWC purchased the patent, and for 2016, their Year of the Pilot's watch, they rolled out effectively a chronograph version of the same watch, but with IWC design language. So we're going to play this or that. Do you go with the original, or do you go with the refinement?
So, I guess before I start out, what I thought was really interesting about this, as I was sort of, getting into researching the pieces, was it's not really often that you hear about a brand purchasing the patent from another brand of an already pre-existing watch that are extremely similar in appearance, that you would really correlate the two to say, hey, they really did just take that idea. For me personally, aesthetically wise, I would go with the Vogard. 43 millimeters versus the 45 millimeter case on the IWC. They make a couple different versions of the Vogard. They have the Time Zoner Officer here. They do a chrono as well. I thought the chrono was a little bit busier than I would have liked. This was much more simplified with the GMT hand. Super easy to use. You have a lever system that you can open up and to adjust the bezel. Really straightforward and simple. I really like the black and PVD case and the overall appearance. As it turns out, my dad actually has this watch, this exact one, and wears it regularly. It doesn't come on the white rubber strap from the factory. It actually comes on like a camel color croc, which really looks great. But for me, I'm going to go with the Vogard. There's also a price difference between the two. It's about $3,500 price difference. This one retails for $8,500. The IWC for $11,900. Just bang for the buck. I'm going with the Vogard.
Well, I'm going to be the contrarian. I know everyone loves independence, and I root for the little guy in most cases, but I think the IWC for an extra $3,400 is just a better watch. I think the ability to, first of all, this is one of the few travel watches that lets you set the hour and the minute separately, so it's got that going for it. It's also IWC's in-house flyback chronograph caliber, and I am one of those guys who likes the look of the Breitling Navitimer. If numbers are good, lots of numbers are great. So I kind of like the highly technical look of the watch. Plus, if ever there was an argument for buying from a large watchmaker with an actual R&D budget, the fact that this thing with its bezel setting system and chronograph through fittings is 6 ATM water resistant is that reason. Honestly, I think you're just getting more watch if you can wear it. And here's the thing, maybe this is a cue for our wrist shots, but 46 is a burly watch. The Vogard was 44. So I'm going to go out on a limb and say the 46 IWC is the one for me, because I'm wearing a 46 today, guys, and this is my first ever JLC. It's actually closer to a 47
now,
than
is that
a 46.
46? It's including the pushers?
Oh, hell no. You factor those things in, it's like 50. But you can see my wrist is tiny, 16 centimeters, and yet the watch does fit. It stays secure. It's not excessively heavy. There's not lug overlap. This thing works, and on the basis of this thing actually fitting my anatomy, I'm going to go with the IWC.
It's a very ergonomic watch, too, especially with the diver strap. By not having a deployment, it really fits and snugs much better.
Yeah, you guys can see that. Plus, I mean, granted, you're not going to get this with the IWC, but you can pull the thing apart.
What's interesting, too, about these watches is each of them has a little bit of overlay from the bezel. So the Vogard is a 43 with a 44 millimeter bezel, and I believe that the IWC, similar situation, 45 with a 46 millimeter bezel. But I tend to agree that the removal of the lever and simplifying it into the bezel was an awesome upgrade.
Yeah, IWC went with a different system from their old 80s Ocean 2000 dive watch, where you have to essentially manipulate both edges of the bezel to unlock it, so you can't accidentally move the travel time. The Vogard system isn't inclined to be accidentally budged either, but yet there's a locking lever system that's awkward, more parts. This is a rare case where the big guy actually did something smarter than the little guy, but it's also a matter of resources. Yeah. IWC had unlimited R&D.
Exactly.
I'll throw this out, one more thing. Don't mean to cut you off, but
no, go for it.
The last time IWC borrowed a patent from another watch brand, it was Cartier's quick release bracelet system for the Roadster, now doing business on the Aqua Timers.
Oh, wow. That's good
It's
to know.
the same system.
So we already, I guess we did your what's on the wrist. I guess we'll go with mine. Mine today. I am wearing a 5980 in steel, 5980/1A with the blue dial. I do not have the date set, as I never have a pusher on me to be able to adjust it, and I just don't really ever feel like going all the way through. So amazing watch. The Nautiluses have really jumped up in value of late. We just recently took in a 5980 with a slate dial, and really digging it, even thinking about trading in the blue. What I really like, which is not on this watch, is the slate variation has the black date disc versus, which blends into the dial, versus this version, which has a white date disc.
Unadvertised highlight of that watch, guys, no one ever mentions, but it's a flyback chronograph.
It is. So, interestingly enough, and I probably have already said interestingly enough like 10 times.
There's a lot interesting here. We sell watches, guys.
Exactly.
It's justified.
Patek will tell you that, because one of the big quirks that everybody has is there's no moving second hand. And it's one of the biggest issues that I've had with the watch is I like movement just to know that the watch is running. And is that you can keep the second hand continuously running to act as a second hand if you wish.
Vertical clutch, guys.
Which I never do. I just, part of me just thinks that like if I keep it running, at some point it's either going to break or it's going to shut down or not operate the same way. I mean, it's got to use up, I don't know if it's true or not, but it just has to use up more lubricants if it's always running.
But guys, make sure you give your chronograph an exercise per Mike Michaels. Not stationary, not forever. Yeah, fire it up.
We're going to fire that bad boy up.
Let me just quickly acknowledge our crowd. Robert Dixon joining us from Scotland. I want to wish Lee Cohn safety down in Palm Beach. Watch out for the hurricane. Be well. Paul Velu is greeting us from Seattle, Eradicator 7. I don't know where you're from, but welcome. Thanks for joining us. A. Wilson, I see your Geneva Seal question, and I'm going to get to it. Cam M. Tim, what got you into watches? They're super cool, and I love machines. That's the short answer. We'll do a whole Tim Masso collector profile someday when I finish my collection. Ross Franny, greetings from Ireland. Greetings, Ross. Thank you for staying up late to join us.
Hi to CQ. CQ is actually going to be joining us in Philly for the next couple weeks, so really excited. Hey, CQ, really excited to see you. Get you out of that weather. And then I also want to give a shout out to somebody, because somebody told me they want a shout out to Benji and the Yamron crew in Naples. Wish you guys a safe couple days with the hurricane coming through.
Fortunately, they're on the right side of Florida.
No, it's supposed to hit the whole thing, I thought.
Oh, I think it's going up the East Coast.
Is it East Coast now? They show all those spaghetti lines where it's like it could just go anywhere, but
it's going to be wet.
but no. So hi to everybody. Really good discussion today. I think it's going to end up taking up the bulk of the show. So as I don't butcher all of the French words, Tim is going to step in for me, to sort of just insert those into the conversation. But we've got the GPHG coming out, which stands for?
It's the Grand Prix d'Horlogerie de Genève. So there's my high school French at its best.
Which is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I would call it like the Academy Awards of the watch industry, where all of the brands submit watches for a guest of judges to come on and pick the best of 12 different categories. And then the number one watch, I guess, gets chosen, which is the...
This is the Aiguille d'Or, the sort of... It literally translates to the golden needle, but it's like the golden hand.
Which is, I guess, best picture.
Basically.
Basically best picture.
And unlike the Oscars, we're going to get it right.
So what I decided to do today was, because they just released the list, I think it was September 1st, of they narrow down each of the categories to 6, and then they all vote on it in Switzerland, was go over my 12 choices. And then okay. Tim, of course, is going to chime in because he knows everything that's going on. And I will get us started. So the pictures are going to come up so that you guys can see what we're talking about. And feel free to chime in if you have any questions or have anything that you want to input into the conversation via the chat, and we can definitely talk about that too. So starting us off the bat, the first category is artistic crafts, which is for me a category that I really love because I think that the artists within the watch industry don't necessarily get enough credit. And you really get to see crafts from all over the world coming in to their finest. And it's a lot of crafts, too, that you don't necessarily see anymore because, they're just the only people that are supporting these craftsmen are often the watch industry. And, it's really amazing to see that the pieces that they create, and again, it's a category that I love. So for me, the winner, and, it'll be interesting, it's like a bracket, I'll get to see how these watches do, is the Voutilanen Akinokure, which is it the Vinct 8? That's how you would pronounce that?
That would be Vent 8.
Okay, so that's the nuts and bolts of the watch. So in-house movement designed by Voutilanen. The main plate and bridges are in German silver and titanium. From what I understand, it can take Voutilanen over 6 months to produce a single watch, and he's one of the more well-known independent manufacturers that's out there right now. This particular dial, as well as the bridges and the case back, which you guys will see in the photos, was done by one of the finest Japanese lacquer studios in the world, and took over 1,000 hours to do the work. So extraordinary watch, and as I was going through and looking at the selections, it wasn't, for me, it was what stood out as, a watch that I would want to own, as well as, just the level of work and detail that, that went into the pieces.
Now, I want to quickly reach out to our audience one more time because we've got friends joining us from Greece, Wisconsin, Finland. Alexi, longtime viewer of the channel, the RJ1986 from Amsterdam. We've got Eradicator7, he says he's from Greece, so welcome from Greece. And I also want to reach out to Philip. Thank you for joining us from Zurich. Anyone who's staying up late to watch us, we appreciate your views. So yeah, definitely. Let me just mention that in terms of artistic exception, for me, it's Konstantin Chaikin's Joker watch because it's so ridiculous. A combination of painting and guilloche. If you haven't seen the watch, it's literally what the name implies. We don't talk much about Russian horology, and we do.
He got a lot of press for that watch.
And deservedly so. Yeah. But this is something with more universal appeal than the Russian time zone watch that had all 11 time zones of Russia. We don't talk much about Russian horology beyond things like Poljot and kind of, unfortunately, kind of derisive discussion of copies of Swiss movements. This is a great example of Russian high horology at its best. A well-earned nomination. I hope he wins. Sorry, Carrie.
I definitely think he's in the running, like as one of the major people to win too. I know that when a lot of these watches get good press starting at Baselworld, I think that definitely translates into the final 6 selection and then who ultimately gets picked. But moving on to the next category, which is the calendar category. For me, I went with the Royal Oak Perpetual Calendar in black ceramic. So, you know, for me, it was this. You know, it was the most logical choice. I happen to love the watch. I think Audemars Piguet came out with. I don't know if they were the inventor of, but I know that they came out with a series of 9 perpetuals in 1955, which was the first time that they took into account a leap year in a watch.
Yeah, early into the series, they added a leap year indicator.
Yeah, which was.
Go ahead. Yeah, they beat Patek to the game by about 25 years. So yeah, that was an innovative moment. But also worth mentioning, I take slight exception to giving this the Calendar Watch Award, specifically because the main innovation here is that they changed the case material. This is a watch that came out a year prior. They changed the case material and it's up for the Calendar Award. I'm not saying it's not a great piece, but I do feel it's being nominated for something other than the category header.
And I mean, why, you know, obviously, again, it came out in steel the prior year in a silver and a blue dial. For me, I absolutely love the ceramic black case. And when I was going through the choices, it wasn't just simply, you know, do I love the way the watch looks or things like that, but it's also the marketability of the watch, how popular it is amongst collectors, and what's the desirability.
It's an awesome watch,
and
no contest.
Of the APs that's currently being produced right now, that along with their double bounce skeleton are probably the 2 hardest to get. From what I understand, the black ceramic takes 5 times as long to machine, polish, and refinish as the standard steel, and it took them, you know, quite a while just to figure out how to do it. And it's also I believe the first time that you have a ceramic case back, as well as the ceramic case and bracelet.
Yeah, this, according to their own. Again, I haven't checked on this. I haven't held the stopwatch, but according to Audemars Piguet's claims, it actually takes something approaching 30 to 35 hours to finish this one, which is multiples of what it takes to finish a steel Royal Oak. So you're not getting a machine or like a kiln-made product. You are getting a hand-finished product, and never more.
Yeah, and I mean, again, and I don't know if you guys have ever held a Royal Oak. You can, and you know, and you look and you see like just even the inner links there all have high polish edges, so each individual piece is done by hand, and it's beautiful. And for me, I love the way the watch looks. Obviously, you know, they did this watch with a blue dial for the only watch auction, which will be interesting to see how it does. But for me, as a calendar watch, it's the one watch that I would want. The other watch that I really liked is the Grubel Force, but for me, I took into account, you know, price point, availability, things like that, and, you know, this won it up for me.
I should mention, speaking of price point, the Konstantin Chaikin Joker watch is about $8,000 US.
That's it?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
99 pieces, though. 99 pieces, so you got to move quick.
Now that you've said it, they're going to be gone.
That's going to be like Ben Affleck's giveaway for the next Batman movie. Everyone on the crew is going to get one.
That or Leo. Leo will be wearing that for if he gets the Joker part. But no, so... Next category, we had the chronograph, which, you know, the calendar, chronograph, like these are the sorts of categories where there's a lot of entrants, and because they're the prestigious categories that people really want to win. For me, it was a no-brainer. The Zenith Defy El Primero, the new one, 1/100th of a second. I thought the watch is gorgeous. You know, can be multiple variations of the watch, but this is the one that was submitted, which was the titanium with the skeletonized dial. My particular favorite variation of the watch is the ceramized aluminum version, which is all black with the skeletonized dial. Watch ranges from about 9,500 to 11,900, but I think that this represents the official comeback of the El Primero movement for Zenith. And you have a separate power reserve specifically for the chronograph. You've got 2 separate escapements, a new patented material for those escapements, and the watch is absolutely gorgeous. And all of this at that price point, I think, is very hard to beat.
Definitely, it's an evolution of the Caliber 360 from Tag Heuer. So a good job of taking the Guy Simone ultra haute de gamme stuff from Tag that was scarcely ever seen and bringing it into a mass market package that sells for a reasonable price. Looks the business. I mean, I saw the initial photos and I thought, uh-oh, it's a little Hublesque, but although it may have a little bit of Hublot design DNA, it's got a lot more Guy Simon engineering DNA. You take, you know, the 1/100th of a second chronograph, separate power reserve of 50 hours, added to a stunning watch that looks the business with a price that's right in the wheelhouse. If I hadn't handled the Parmigiani Fleurier Chronor Anniversaire, I would probably be picking the Zenith for my chronograph choice. The fact, Amintas, thank you for sending me your watch to videotape before we delivered it. Between the skeletonized 18-karat rose gold movement, the blue enamel dial, the double column wheel split second, 36,000 vibration per hour escapement caliber, that watch overwhelmed me, and it was one of the top 3 watches that I videotaped last year. So, Amintas, on the basis of your watch, I'm going to give that the nod over the Zenith, pending delivery of the Day 521.
Now, correct me if I'm wrong. So, another great feature of this, the Zenith, is it's COSC certified, which is great. And then you have the escapements are actually at different rates. One's at 36,000, and the other one is at 360,000. And I just think that, again, for all of this to work, having the separate power reserve for the chrono at 1/100th of a second, I think they said the maximum time that the chronograph can run is actually 50 minutes.
It is,
which is again, I think remarkable given at how much power it takes.
It's a stunning watch, but again, I am holding Zenith to a standard. They have to actually deliver the watch this year in order to get my vote.
They're going to, yeah.
It's a race. It's going to come down to the wire.
All fourth quarter.
I love the watch, though.
But no, so moving on, next category, jewelry watches. So I think, jewelry watches, or ladies' watches in general, we don't necessarily give that much attention to on this show. So, we will start in the future, I think, maybe. But so jewelry watches are very, they're unique creations from, brands like Graf, Cartier, Bulgari, very often using precious gemstones and diamonds. And again, I think this falls more in line with artistic crafts than anything else because they are generally one-off pieces of art. So my winner for this watch was the Serpenti Misteriosi high jewelry watch, which you guys can see is the first time that Bulgari has done a double-headed snake watch. The Serpenti watch actually has a very long history with Bulgari. Originally, the movements were done by JLC, and these watches were often set with precious gemstones and enamel, and bring very high dollars at auction and are still very much desired today. Since the major relaunch and revamping of the Serpenti line, the movements are now done by Bulgari, very often quartz, and these fantastic pieces are done as one-of-a-kind creations. This one here is a one-of-kind example with, emerald eyes, emeralds on the top of the head, as well as diamonds throughout the case and bracelet. And, I happen to think that the watch is beautiful. Of the different choices, again, all of them were great, but I sort of based it on the fact that I took in the heritage of the line for the brand. And, it wasn't just some one-off creation that came about. It's something that they've been doing for decades, and the brand is actually known for, outside of, call it, ladies' watches.
And I'll also add, since the 1940s, the Serpenti line, a great tradition, whether with the Tubagas wound dowel gold bracelets or the, as Brian said, gem set and enameled scales on a conventional, more animal-like iteration. From the abstract to the very literal, Serpenti is spectacular. And it's one of the few ladies' watch series that guys will collect in earnest. And I've seen quite a few vintage collectors that will actually have a collecting theme, which is just to flesh out their holdings of Serpenti. They can't wear them, they can't use them, they can only appreciate them. They're that good.
And I've sold a couple of them to collectors that want them, simply just for that, not necessarily that they're going to wear them, but A, artistic beauty, and B, that that if anything is going to go up over time, it's one of these pieces from the 50s that's got provenance, that that has the JLC movement and things like that, where you're seeing an incredible uptick in value. Also, what helps those is the price at which Bulgari is now charging for these watches. Definitely does help the value of the older ones. Moving on to ladies' watches. So this is a category that I think encompasses all ladies' watches. On prior shows, I've sort of talked about, or we've talked about, I think the not necessarily comeback, but how well Frank Mueller does ladies' watches, and that they can do gold and diamonds at a price point that many other brands can't. And my choice for this year was the Vanguard Lady Color Dream. The Vanguard, for those of you that don't know, draws its inspiration from the Curve X, slightly larger, sportier case. This particular variation of the watch is gem set with diamonds in rose gold. You can see why it's the Color Dreams. You have the, is it enamel on the numbers? No, it's lacquer.
It's a lacquer.
It's a lacquer. So colored lacquer on the numbers. And all of this for $36,800. So while, of course, very expensive, relative to what other brands would charge for an all gold watch, completely gem set, I think most of the other brands of a similar caliber would be much more expensive. Personally, I didn't love that many of the ladies' watches that were presented this year. I think that there could have been some other options. I know that Audemars submitted the ladies' Royal Oak with the frosted gold, which I like, but at the same time, it's really just a different treatment on a pre-existing watch. And the other thing too is I don't know what happens to that watch if it's been scratched or dented or something like that. Like, I don't know if they can retreat it or what happens there. And for me, I don't know, that affected my view of the watch.
I believe it can be refinished, but I want to say it's a reference like 14454. 14454 is going back to Le Brassus and nowhere else to be refinished. They're not doing that in clear water.
No.
They're not doing that in a satellite facility. I would say for me it was the Urwerk UR106 Flower Power.
Really?
I liked it a lot. I'm a fan of horology for its own sake, and I think, first of all, yes, it has a femininity to it. It is diamond paved. There is a handsome use of color contrast in the gems that are set. But above all, this is a watch that's a machine for the sake of the machine, and I want to know the lady who's wearing that on her wrist. That's the kind of thing that would get my attention, whether gem set or not. A woman wearing an Urwerk has an interesting story to tell, and I want to hear it. It's Tinder for your wrist.
So it was a super cool. Was it completely gem set, if I remember correctly?
Inside and out.
Inside and out. So it's a super cool watch. Moving on, we're going to get through this next one. I know this is like the tough part of the presentation, is like the ladies' pieces. Is the ladies' high mechanical. I went the Van Cleef & Arpels Papillon Automate. Self-winding mechanical movement with a random automaton butterfly that it was developed exclusively for Van Cleef, and the frequency of the movement of the butterfly is irregular and will change, I think, based on the wearer and how they're wearing the watch. Sometimes it'll flutter different amounts.
Yes.
But it's hard to tell from the picture, but it's like a three-dimensional case, and you've got a lot of depth there. And I just, from a artistic point of view, I just think that the watch is beautiful. I think that it's a super cool complication that you just won't generally see, that Van Cleef has started doing, and they've done it very well. And as I thought it was unique to just, to pick a ladies perpetual. I just thought, like, lots of, it's just like any brand can do a ladies perpetual, but I thought that this was super unique to what they're doing, and a good choice.
I would say if this weren't diamond paved, it would not be a bad choice for a man, because the mechanical engineering that went into the randomizer for the butterfly is mind-bending. I sat through the presentation from the watchmaker / engineer who was responsible for the CAD/CAM design of this, and for the sheer amount of brain power that went into making that thing flap randomly, like a real butterfly. They could have done so many other more accessible complications that were more literal and traditional, from perpetual calendars to chronographs, blah, 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 blah. This was done specifically in service of their motto, the poetry of time. It is poetic. It is unnecessary. And if you don't have the patience to wait for it to flap randomly, they even added an on-demand button to cue the movement. So this is definitely a great installment from Van Cleef.
And it's a work of art.
Yeah, my question is, will they port this technology over to a man's automaton? Because if they do, that's going to have a clientele.
We've seen what a lot of the automaton watches on the case backs of some Blancpains and Breguets.
And I'll say this, after the fashion editors at SIHH broke everything in the Ulysse Nardin booth, the Van Cleef was still running. So it ran the gauntlet of Access Hollywood. Never let them touch another watch.
Now that we've gotten through the ladies' pieces, moving on to some of the better categories. So we've got mechanical exception, which is very often the most complicated watches, that are presented. And my choice for this year, because I am going to butcher the name, so I'll let you say it.
Okay, Vacheron Constantin, Le Cabinotier Celestia Astronomia.
So this was a watch that Vacheron released at SIHH. It is the most complicated wristwatch that Vacheron has ever produced. The focus of the watch is astronomical complications. So their prior most complicated watch, I believe, had a minute repeater and a tourbillon as well as some of these, but they've decided to do a more focused exploration of astronomical complications. One of, I think, the unique things about the watch is just that it's like a traditional presentation of the complications, but like in a modern way. Like they have the tide, done three-dimensionally with depth on the dial. And I think this could have been a watch that you could have said looks overly busy, complicated, and just done completely wrong. But I think that they did all of the right things. I think that they did a great job. It'll be interesting to see how quickly they can deliver this watch and how many that they're going to produce. But I'll let you talk a little bit more about the complications.
Yeah, I would say this is Vacheron doing, in my opinion, somewhat more appealing version of the Patek Philippe Sky Moon Tourbillon. Now, they've got over 20 complications here, including a running equation of time, which is cool because unlike the +15, -15 variant style, this actually shows you the relationship of solar time as it traces the arc of the dial alongside mean time. So it's more readable than a traditional equation of time. It also has sunrise, sunset, which is geographically proximate, so the watch is going to have to be programmed for where you live, but that's great. Personalization is the thing at this level. It also has a perpetual calendar. It also has a tourbillon. It also has sidereal time. It also has a tidal indicator. And at 45 millimeters, no, this is not a traditionally sized Vacheron, but then again, the Patek is the size of a hockey puck, so that is the standard in the segment. I think this is a more appealing take.
And I think it's more wearable too.
And I think the gauntlet's been thrown down. I think Patek needs to focus on making its ultra complications wearable, accessible. And let me tell you, this watch, having experienced the Grand Exhibition, this watch is more readable and intelligible than what Patek's got. But that's just competition improving the breed.
Yeah, definitely. And I definitely think that this is a watch that they'll make in very limited quantities. But based on the other watches that I saw, I think that this one really has a good shot of winning this category.
Yeah, and deservedly so.
Moving on. So I think the next category is men's watches in general. The watch that I picked for me was a sleeper, and it was a watch that we've talked about before. And from the moment I put the watch on, I said it was a winner, and that is the Octa Finissimo Automatic. This is currently the thinnest automatic watch in the world, and it is the third time that Bulgari has won a world record for a complication. 60-hour power reserve, titanium case and bracelet, articulated links, so it's super comfortable. The watch fits amazingly well, and I think that the Octa case it went through growing pains in the beginning. I think that Bulgari was really trying to figure out the direction of the watch and waiting for something to stick, to get people that are used to, the Genta, Nautiluses, and Royal Oaks, and to come out with a watch that sticks in the market. And for me, this is it. The watch is coming in at an awesome price point. It's available either on the bracelet or a rubber strap. Particularly, I happen to really like the bracelet, but the rubber strap is also really nice. The watch fits amazingly well, even given the shape. If you saw during the side angle, it convexes down a little bit.
It's also a wafer. I mean, it's 5.15 millimeters
couldn't be lighter.
thick.
It is crazy.
And titanium.
And I think that it's unique and a talking piece. And I think it's a big winner for Bulgari.
I'm going to say that that would be my choice as well, and it's a no-brainer because the watch is accessibly priced. For this price, you're talking about Omegas, you're talking about high-end Breitlings, you're talking about a Rolex Steel Daytona, and this is a watch that's more distinctive and more handcrafted than any of them. I also like the fact that it's not leaning on the Gerald Genta inheritance. There are a lot of movements in Bulgari's haute de gamme line, like for instance the minute repeater, that are essentially repurposed Gerald Genta calibers that have been around since the 80s and 90s. And while those are impressive technically, A, they weren't invented in the Bulgari era of ownership, and B, they don't they don't represent what the great unwashed, the rest of us, are buying from Bulgari. So to offer something that's handmade, hand-finished, developed with Bulgari money in the era of Bulgari ownership and accessible to collectors who would be cross-shopping, machine-made watches. This is an awesome watch, and the fact that they made it less than 6 millimeters thick with a real water resistance rating. Again, there are some watches in this class, the ultra thin, where you don't even want to sweat too heavily while wearing them. You don't want to strap them on your wrist because the crystal will contact the hands and stop the movement. This is an everyday watch for between $12,600 and $13,900 on a bracelet that you'd be proud to own, that you would compare to any Jaeger-LeCoultre, any, I would say, quite honestly, Glossoot original, any, I would say Gerard Perregaux. It's in that class.
Yeah,
and
it's a watch that, it needs. I think it needs to get the message out there and to get on people's wrists, because once people try it on and see what it's like in the wild, that's when it catches on. And I think that that's really what that Bulgari needs. And I just think that watch people should spread the message.
And I also say after the lacquered Diagonal Magnesium Chrono from last year, now you add this, all of a sudden Bulgari has a lot of attractive sub $15,000 options for the watch collector who's not cross-shopping,
I just hope they keep
grand
it tight.
complication.
I hope they keep it tight and limited and hard to get, and that's really what this watch needs. It can't be all over the place, and it's got to be, I think, a little bit difficult to get, that you can, that you walk in and there's a little bit of a wait to even get it.
Yeah, if it takes about 4 weeks to get it, that sounds just about right.
Yeah. Moving on, next category, I'll let you say it because I'm going to butcher it.
Okay, the Petite Aiguille. Last year, it went to the Tudor Heritage Black Bay Bronze. This year.
So one of the caveats of the category is that it has to retail for under 8,000 Swiss francs. So lots of competition in this particular category, and it also happens to be one of the most sought-after categories to win. For me, it was the 1965 First Divers Recreation Seiko, which is under the Prospects line, which is actually a watch that we had here on the show that we did for Watches Live under the Gothberg channel. So this is Seiko and Japan's first ever dive watch when it came out in 1965. This watch is original to that design, except 1.9 millimeters larger and much more up-to-date in terms of the technology of the movement. It's got a box-shaped sapphire crystal, a movement designed specifically for diving, and it's water-resistant to 200 meters. This is a watch, it's limited to, I believe, 2,000 pieces, or is it 1965?
2,000 pieces.
2,000 pieces worldwide. It's sold out virtually everywhere in the world. We've even seen them selling at slightly above list for those that want to get the watch. I think the watch is a winner. I think that this is the epitome of everything that Seiko is doing right now to getting watch collectors invested into the brand, and I think that you're seeing it really pay dividends as people are talking about a lot of watches that they're doing. And it's a watch that I know that we have one tucked away for a rainy day for someone that would want the watch, but I want to say it's about $3,500 retail, I think it's a winner.
Yeah, I think you also need to look, because God is in the details here. Some of the refinements that have been made, like the inclusion of a box section sapphire crystal, so you get a little of that off-axis vintage plexi distortion, but with the quality of a sapphire. The 8L35 movement came over from Grand Seiko, so you're getting a lot more than you'd typically see in the Prospects lineup in terms of material substance and engineering refinement. And I think as vintage tributes go, this is a tribute to the 62 MAS from 65. It's a very literal, accurate, but in my opinion, more soulful reissue than we've seen from other brands. I don't sense any cynicism. The design, the execution, the quality, and the fact that they went overboard, giving it way more movement than needed.
Comes with a bracelet too.
Yeah, this is a lot of value. Don't look at it as an expensive Seiko. Look at it as the most attractively priced Grand Seiko diver.
So definitely a winner, and for me it was a no-brainer from that category. Moving on, for sport watches, a little bit torn between these. I went with the Pelages LHD, left-handed diver. This is a watch that was released and produced in a limited number series. I don't think that they ever said what that number is. They just keep producing them with the number on the back. Numbered series. COSC certified, in-house movement, waterproof to 500 meters with a automatic helium escape valve, all titanium, like the other Pelages is. It's got that beige luminescent markers. I think for a sport watch, it checks all the boxes. It's light, it's sizable, it's resilient. You've got an in-house movement at an affordable price point. It comes with a rubber strap. Like for me, it just checked all of the boxes.
I believe it's sub 4,500.
It is. It's just over 4, I believe. And I love the watch, and I think that it's hard to create a follow-up to what the Pelages was, because I think that when the Pelages first came out, everybody looked at it like it was an all-titanium Rolex at about $4,000, which they blew it out of the water on that one. And so to make a left-handed diver is no easy feat. And it's true to being what a diving watch should be. Is a diving watch really should be a right-handed wear, and but obviously most people I think are wearing it on their left. But for me, it was a winner in the category. Yeah.
First thing I like is it's not another Black Bay, which I got to admit is getting played out. So I appreciate that it's the Pelages.
Real quick. From Watch Yoda, I forgot to mention that that is one of the best parts of the watch is the adjustable clasp. It'll automatically adjust to the size of your wrist via spring in the clasp.
So I've always liked the Pelages better than the Black Bay, and I'm glad that the Pelages is getting its moment in the spotlight. Not being a straight-up vintage play or vintage-y style, it doesn't really pander to the masses, although they've managed to take the Pelages, the more modern diver, and create a heartfelt reference 7021 Marine Nationale tribute without creating a replica watch. I don't like the reissues. I'm not into it. So I'm happy to see the base model modified. I'm happy to see it in a modern package. I'm happy to see it reborn in spirit, not literally in form. But I'm still going to say that my pick in this category goes to the incomparable MB&F HM7 Aquapod. Not because it's more expensive, although duh.
It's not really a sport watch, though.
I asked
it's
this.
as delicate as like a glass vase.
It's swimmable. And it's got a rotating bezel, and that's all I need, because I've never seen journalists borderline fight over anything. And at SIHH
Do you actually like the look of that thing?
I like it.
I think it.
I love it. I would put it up for the Agudor. I wouldn't have it in the sport watch category.
I don't think you could drop that thing from 3 inches on top of carpet, and that thing would survive the fall.
Have we ever dropped a Tudor to test the theory? I don't care. This was the hottest watch at SIHH. You ask everyone, and to a man and woman, like, where did you get that scar? Oh, I was fighting over being the first to see the HM7 Aquapod, best in show. That was the reaction. It was that good. It put Richard Mille back on the car carrier, to use the old cliche. This watch is so special, it deserves to be up for a better award, but since it's in the sport watch category, it deserves to win that. And failing that, I'm going to go with Grand Seiko's High Beat Diver.
Great watch. That was my rival to this one, but I had already gone with the Seiko. And I sort of wanted to change things up a little bit.
Well, it's a Grand Seiko. They're no longer the same thing, theoretically. But that would have been my pick with the blue dial version, hobnail blue, gorgeous high beat movement, watchmaker made, artisanally finished, maybe a little too expensive. I think it was up around $12,000, $13,000.
Which piece?
The Grand Seiko High Beat Diver.
I think it's 10.9, but maybe that was Swiss franc.
Yeah, I think that was Swiss franc. Anyway, it's going to be a test case to see what kind of money a Grand Seiko, saved the micro artist studio 8-day spring drive. Well, what a Grand Seiko can pull down.
I mean, it's a watch that's going to go head to head with the Deep Sea. So it's just a matter of if somebody wants, I think, to get a Rolex or to try something a little bit different. And I think that you are going to have a lot of people that you know, are making the move over to get that somewhat, you know, in the know oversized sports watch.
It's a test case for the brand, but I do think it's worth what they're asking for it.
Second to last category now is the Tourbillon and Escapement. For this watch, I went with the Arnold & Son Tourbillon Chronometer number 36. This is a watch that personally, I happen to like the non-Tourbillon version better, because I think that you get the overall look for, you know, a significantly better price point. But I'm a huge fan of the watch. You know, I love the look of having, you know, twin barrels that give you over 90 hours of power reserve. The Tourbillon is a 3-spoke design, which is, you know, a hallmark of the brand. It's a COSC certified tourbillon, which you don't see very often.
True.
And the original inspiration for the watch, I believe, came from a John Arnold pocket watch. So English manufacturer. I thought the case back was beautiful. And of the watches that were in this category, for me, it was the one that I would actually, you know, that I would actually purchase.
I would take the David Kondo 1740 First Date. This would be my runaway choice. First of all, I love the hidden crown. Sure, Chanel did it first with the J12 Mysterious, but this guy did it better. And I'll also mention that he's an old JLC hand, but he's done some impressive things in independent horology since leaving JLC, where he was responsible for some of the late minute repeaters. But he did the Fonderie 47 inversion principle, the watch that used repurposed AK-47 material to create a jump hour scrolling minute tourbillon for a good cause. He also did the Baudelaire Ivresse, which is one of the coolest tourbillon watches of the last 20 years, which is to say, one of the coolest tourbillon watches ever in the wristwatch format. This watch that he's created is wonderfully warm, it's handsome, it's beautiful, it's mechanically exceptional, it's as attractive on the front as it is on the back. It has a spectacular flying tourbillon, 6-day power reserve, unique finish, and you will have a one-on-one relationship with the manufacturer. A cool guy, a great watch, and a great independent brand. He still lives right down the street from Jaeger-LeCoultre.
I don't even think he could explain his watch as good as you explain his watch.
Well, this is what I do. He makes them.
But was it who was it at the show that you were explaining? Was it Christophe Claret that you were explaining the watch to everybody? And like, I think that Christophe actually walked over to my dad and was like, he explains my watches better than I could ever explain my watches. And it was just amazing.
I've been known to do something like that.
But no, so just to answer a quick question from the chat, or a quick point regarding the Chronometric Blue, I do, you know, it is the closest equivalent that FP Journe has to a 5711. As far as production numbers go, they produce around 90 to 100 per year, and considering they only make you know, around 900 watches for the year, it's about a tenth of their production. Of the 900 watches that are produced per year, around 250 or so come to the States. So you can do the math on how many Chronometric Blues come into the States. And of all the dials that they create, it is actually the most labor-intensive dial to produce, as well as the one with the highest failure rate. So for their lowest price point watch. So this is a watch that FP Journe produces, and he offers it out at a price point lower than what he would really need to even do, and it's an amazing watch, and I think it's a must-have.
Speaking of which, Clive mentioning Ronnie James Dio, Holy Diver, in the chat. I don't know the context, but badass. I like this guy.
But no, so final category, travel time watch. Not gonna lie, there wasn't a single watch from this category that I actually really even liked that much. So it was tough for me. So what I then really just based it on was sort of a design that I gravitated towards, which was the, you know, Frederick Constant Classic World Timer. This watch had a very, I don't want to say like a Patek feel, but it had a classic world time feel. And for me, for a world time, I wanted to be simple to use, straightforward, and easy to read. And this one checked all of those boxes. It was the only one, I think, in the category that checked all of those boxes. Completely controllable through the crown, which is great. rose gold plated, under $4,000 price point, brown dial. Overall, super accessible watch, easy to use, great look, and again, for me, it's just nuts and bolts, everything that you would want in a travel time.
For me, I can actually get behind one of the watches in the category in good faith. I do love the Parmigiani Fleurier Toric Hemispheres Retrograde. Now, the problem with the previous Hemispheres was that it was not attractive. But when you combine the independent hour and minute setting of the second time zone with the retrograde complication and that gorgeous toric case, which was Michel Parmigiani's first case shape back in the mid-90s. You take the purity of form with the brilliance of the caliber itself. Remember, you cannot set most travel times to the minute, and with 41 time zones now, not counting some airports that are offset by 15 minutes, that is a cool feature to have. In the toric case, it finally looks like something I would like to have on my wrist. So for me, I can say in good faith, that's the watch I like and want to win the travel time category.
Awesome. So it's definitely going to be interesting to see what ends up winning. Who is your pick for the ultimate winner?
Tudor. I'm undecided. Honestly, this is a tough one to pick just because, quite frankly, I'm not decided. I will hold you in suspense, to reuse a line.
So, for me, I think that it's going to end up being the Vacheron. I think that it was revolutionary for the brand. I think that it was the most complicated wristwatch that they've ever made. I think that it was well received, and that I think that they could take the top prize this year.
I think it should go to MB&F. I don't care.
You really like the Aquapod that much?
I love it.
Oh,
it's wacky.
It is.
If it doesn't go to MB&F, it should go to David Kondo.
I guess it's a love or hate it kind of watch.
It is a love or hate kind of watch. Do you think a watch should be both expensive and silly? I do. And therefore, I vote.
Some of their watches, I mean, I do like the ones that look like that have like the twin jet engines. Is that the HM04?
That's the HM4.
HM4. To me, that was an unbelievable watch.
Thunderbolt. I love that watch. That's a cool watch, and not only is that a cool watch, but I feel like the HM7 is in the spirit of that crazy thing.
Yeah, but no. So I think that's all that we have time for today. I guess what I want to do though is we gave a pocket watch away on the last show. Thank you guys so much for submitting. I want to give another one out today.
We gave a Swiss Army knife away.
Yeah,
before someone presses the case and claims a pocket watch.
Sorry, tell them a little bit about what it is.
Oh no,
did I say pocket watch?
You did say pocket watch.
Yeah, so tell them real quick about what it is.
Okay, this is a gorgeous Wenger Bergion Swiss Army knife watchmaker's tool. So it's a Swiss Army knife from Wenger, so it's the real deal, but what it also is a set of tools made by Bergion, which is the name in watchmakers equipment. So you've got just about everything you need to take your watch apart and decase it right here. It even has, for you watchmakers out there who are working on old-fashioned watches, it even has a case knife built in. Also exceptional for spreading butter. This one prevents you from slicing yourself while popping open the back of that old Zodiac Seawolf.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is I'm about to put an email into the chat. It is watcheslive@golfbergwatches.com. And I think that if you put it in there, just today's date and just write giveaway in the title. Put your mailing address as well as who you think is going to win the the ultimate award for the competition. Curious to see what everybody's choices are, and and we'll get this bad boy sent out to you, and and respond back if you're the winner.
What can I say? This is pretty good swag, guys. We're a long way from my old catalogs.
But no, so really appreciate you guys logging on. I'm Brian. This is Tim. This is the Wednesday Windup, and thank you guys for logging on.